Emmy adjusted her grip on the dense, glossy cube of gravitronium, her knuckles white against its dark surface. Her alien classmates watched, their expressions a mix of amusement and doubt. Glorin, a tall Zorian with slender limbs and a transparent, bioluminescent skin, muttered something to his friend, who chuckled. They didn't expect much from a fragile human attempting to lift a material that even the strongest species struggled with. Determined, Amy planted her feet firmly on the ground, drawing in a deep breath. A hush fell over the room as she began to lift. At first, nothing happened. The weight was immense, pressing down on her arms and shoulders. Her muscles trembled under the strain, and she could feel every fiber fighting to maintain control. But Amy didn't give up. She adjusted her stance, bending her knees and engaging her core, then pulled harder, her breath steady and focused. The cube inched upward, slowly, just enough to hover a few centimeters off the platform. Gasps rippled through the room, and even Glorin's smirk faded into wide-eyed disbelief. Amy held the cube in place for a brief moment, her whole body burning from the effort, before gently lowering it back down. The cube hit the platform with a loud thud, and Emmy exhaled, her face flushed with pride. Professor Vallo, their instructor, blinked all 8 of his eyes in unison, his voice unsteady as he finally spoke. "It seems we have underestimated the human capacity for physical exertion," he said, visibly astonished. A ripple of murmurs passed through the class, not of mockery this time, but of admiration. Emmy looked around, her heart swelling with satisfaction. Humans, despite their apparent fragility, have a strength that came from somewhere deeper, a resilience that no other species in that room seemed to fully understand. As she returned to her seat, she caught a glimpse of Professor Vallo's thoughtful gaze. She sensed she'd just shifted a perception, a spark ignited in his mind, and possibly even among her classmates. This, she knew, was only the beginning. The following morning, as Emmy entered the classroom, she was greeted by an unusual sight. Her classmates, usually scattered across the room in various stages of indifference, were huddled in clusters, whispering in hushed tones. The instant they noticed her, their conversations paused, eyes widening with something she couldn't quite place. A mix of fascination and reverence seemed to hang in the air. Glorin, the Zorian who had scoffed at her the previous day, waved her over with a slender, translucent limb. His skin glowed a soft green, a color Amy had learned indicated curiosity among his species. "Amy," he began, his voice a low hum, "how did you lift that cube?" "You don't. Well, look like a strength-oriented species. Was it some sort of human trick?" Before Amy could answer, Shuyak, a Cathan with 3 eyes that glistened like dark pearls, joined in. "Yes, I've been wondering the same thing," he said, his voice resonating through a set of vocal cords that produced a rich harmony. "Your musculature doesn't appear developed enough to handle such mass. It's puzzling." Amy smiled, sensing genuine interest beneath the skepticism. "It wasn't a trick, really. Back on Earth, we call it physical training," she began, choosing her words carefully. "I used to help my dad fix cars, and it involved a lot of heavy lifting. You see, we humans may not look strong, but our bodies adapt over time with practice. We build muscle through repetition." The explanation was met with an almost comical silence, as if she'd spoken in a language they barely understood. Glorin's skin shifted from green to a soft shade of blue, signaling fascination. "So, it's about repetition and adaptation?" he asked. Amy nodded. "Exactly. On Earth, we don't always have natural strength, so we train our muscles and adapt. Over time, it builds strength." Shoyak's eyes glistened as he considered her words. "Fascinating. Many of our species rely on natural biological traits or technology for strength," he admitted. "The idea of deliberately training oneself to overcome weakness is novel." Just as the conversations seemed to reach a peak, Professor Vallo entered the room. His segmented body moved smoothly as he made his way to the front of the class. The usual ambient hum of voices died down, the silence settling in as he spoke. Students, today will continue our study of gravitronium, he said, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic warmth. He gestured to Amy, acknowledging her demonstration from the day before. But first, I'd like to commend Miss Amy for her impressive display yesterday. It serves as a reminder that every species has unique strengths, some of which may not be immediately visible. Amy felt her cheeks warm as the class turned to look at her, a mixture of admiration and respect evident in their gazes. She gave a slight nod, a bit embarrassed by the attention, but inwardly she felt a sense of pride. After the lesson, Professor Vallo approached her, his 8 eyes blinking slowly, as if pondering his words. "Miss Amy," he began, his voice soft but earnest. "I've been teaching at Atheria Academy for many cycles, and I've never seen a demonstration like yours. I'd like to understand more about this physical training you mentioned. Do you think it could be taught to others?" The idea surprised her. Teaching aliens how to build strength through human-style training was not something she'd anticipated when she enrolled at the academy. But as she looked into his eager, thoughtful expression, she realized that this might be an opportunity to introduce human adaptability in a meaningful way. "Yes, Professor," she replied, a hint of excitement in her voice. "I think it could be taught. It may need some adjustments depending on biology, but the core principles should work." Professor Vallo's segmented body shifted slightly, his tone intrigued. "In that case, I'd like to propose something. Would you be willing to conduct a demonstration, perhaps even a workshop? I believe many here would be eager to learn from you." The thought of standing in front of a room full of alien students, teaching them human techniques, was daunting yet thrilling. Amy took a deep breath, steadying herself before she nodded. "I'd be honored, Professor," she said. "I think it could be a great way to share more about human capabilities." A rare, almost imperceptible smile touched Professor Vallo's face. "Excellent. I'll make the necessary arrangements. Prepare yourself, Miss Amy. You may find that many will be eager to learn from you." As he moved away, Amy stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. She had come to Atheria Academy as a student, but now she was on the path to becoming a teacher in her own right. This unexpected opportunity made her feel, for the first time, that she could contribute something valuable to the galaxy. The news of the upcoming workshop spread through Atheria Academy faster than Amy anticipated. By the end of the day, students from other courses, and even a few professors, had shown interest in attending. Every hallway she walked through was filled with whispers and nods in her direction. For Amy, who had come here feeling like a small fish in an ocean of alien talent, the sudden attention was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. She met with Professor Vallo later that day to discuss the details. The academy had granted her access to a training hall, along with any equipment she needed for the workshop. They even agreed to create holographic displays to demonstrate human muscle structure, as well as strength training equipment that could be adapted for species with different anatomies. As they finalized the preparations, Amy looked at Professor Vallo, her heart thudding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. "Professor, do you really think they'll take this seriously?" she asked, voicing the small seed of doubt that had taken root in her mind. The professor's 8 eyes blinked in a slow, deliberate sequence. "Miss Amy, I have been here for many cycles and seen countless demonstrations, but few have captured the Academy's attention like yours. Strength isn't just about raw power. Your demonstration showed that strength can come from resilience and discipline. That's a lesson worth learning, regardless of species." His words reassured her, and she spent the next few days preparing in earnest. With the Academy's resources, she was able to replicate some basic human training exercises and create visuals that would help explain muscle adaptation. She designed exercises that could work for a variety of alien physiques, from the hovering, fragile Vantians to the lumbering, armored Lurash. The night before the workshop, Amy found herself alone in the training hall, going over the details one last time. The sight of various equipment laid out for alien species brought a smile to her face. She had weights suited for tentacled hands, adjustable straps for floating species, and even a set of padded blocks for species with exoskeletons that couldn't bear high impact. It was like she'd built a bridge between human experience and the rest of the galaxy, each piece of equipment a step toward mutual understanding. Her mind drifted to her family back on Earth. She imagined her father's proud smile, his voice cheering her on. All those days spent helping him fix cars, lifting heavy tools, and learning resilience without knowing where it would lead her. This moment felt like the culmination of all those lessons. As she left the hall, Amy felt a surge of pride and excitement. She wasn't just here to represent herself, she was here to represent all of humanity. The day of the workshop arrived with a crisp anticipation that Amy could feel in every corner of the academy. The training hall, which had been quiet and empty the night before, was now filled with students and faculty members from across Etheria Academy. The room buzzed with a quiet murmur of voices, some curious, others skeptical, but all intrigued. Amy took a deep breath as she scanned the diverse group before her. Hovering Vanshans with their delicate wings flitted near the ceiling, while large Luresh crouched in the back, their armored bodies filling up much of the available space. Beside them, Shuyak, her friend with the glistening black eyes, offered an encouraging nod. The sight was overwhelming yet exhilarating. When the room quieted, Amy stepped forward, her heart pounding. She amplified her voice with the hall's audio system. "Thank you all for coming," she began, pushing through her nerves. "Today, I'm here to share a part of human culture, our way of building strength and resilience through physical training." She walked to the holographic display that showed a detailed rendering of human muscles. You see, humans don't rely on natural strength as much as other species. We build it by challenging our bodies, pushing them just beyond their limits, and letting them adapt over time. She explained basic training principles, showing images of muscle fibers under stress, healing, and then growing stronger. The aliens listened, some with expressions of intense concentration, others with open curiosity. For them, the idea of intentionally putting oneself through discomfort to grow stronger was almost revolutionary. "Now, we're going to try a few basic exercises," she announced, motioning toward the equipment set up throughout the room. She paired different exercises with alien physiology, choosing specific movements to accommodate each species' anatomy. Glorin, with his bioluminescent skin, tackled a weight designed for his narrow limbs. Shuyak, with his compact frame, practiced resistance exercises adapted to his multiple eyes' field of vision. To her surprise, they followed along with remarkable enthusiasm. The sight of aliens struggling, focusing, and even laughing together as they attempted her exercises gave Amy a burst of pride. Each participant discovered something new about themselves as they embraced human-style physical training, pushing themselves in ways they hadn't imagined. As they practiced, she could see a change beginning to take place. The skepticism in their eyes faded, replaced by a glint of understanding, perhaps even respect. Amy moved between groups, offering guidance, adjusting stances, and encouraging them to push just a bit further. At one point, Glorin paused, panting as his skin glowed a shade of pink. This is harder than I thought," he admitted with a small chuckle. Amy smiled. "It's supposed to be hard. That's how you know it's working." As the session continued, Amy felt her nerves give way to a deep sense of purpose. Here she was, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, all of whom were learning, adapting, and testing their limits in a way they'd never done before. By the final hour of the workshop, the training hall had transformed into a vibrant scene of determination and effort. Aliens of every shape and size moved through their exercises, guided by Amy's careful instructions. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the grunts, laughs, and shouts of encouragement from beings who, hours before, had been strangers to the very concept of training. Amy took a moment to observe the incredible diversity of movements around her. Glorin, the slender Zorian, was lifting weights with surprising precision, his skin cycling through colors that indicated both strain and excitement. Shuyak, with his 3 glistening black eyes, was practicing resistance exercises, his focus intense, and his usually harmonious voice breaking into a chuckle as he struggled to hold his stance. At the front of the hall, Professor Vallo watched with his 8 eyes wide, his expression unreadable yet somehow proud. His interest and faith in Amy's workshop had made this moment possible, and she felt a wave of gratitude toward him. To give the participants a sense of the adaptability and endurance that human training required, Amy introduced a final exercise she called the endurance push. The concept was simple: hold a stance or perform a movement for a set amount of time, challenging one's limits while fighting the urge to give up. She knew it would push her alien classmates in ways they hadn't experienced, but she was excited to see how they would handle it. Taking the stance herself as an example, Amy instructed them all to start. She watched as the alien students adopted their own versions, adjusted for their anatomy. Tentacled beings used suctioned grips, floating species hovered just above the ground, and larger creatures used their exoskeletons to hold up weight. Glorin was the first to struggle, his narrow frame trembling under the pressure. "Amy, how much longer?" he gasped, his skin flickering nervously between hues of green and blue. She grinned, catching his eye. "Just a bit longer, Glorin. Keep going, you're stronger than you think." The minutes ticked by, and more participants began to shake with effort. But as each second passed, Amy saw something incredible unfold. Where she expected complaints or defeat, she instead saw gritted determination. Beings from worlds she had never heard of were digging deep, summoning strength they didn't realize they had. Finally, she called time, and a wave of relief washed over the participants. Laughter and cheers erupted, and several aliens dropped to the floor, panting and sharing congratulatory smiles. Amy's heart swelled as she looked around the room, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment and connection. Professor Vallo stepped forward, clapping his segmented hands together, his voice resonating through the hall. "What we have witnessed today is more than a physical demonstration. It is a testament to resilience, to the strength that lies in every species when we are willing to face challenges and push our boundaries. Miss Amy has shown us that strength comes not only from the body but from the will." The aliens turned to her, their faces filled with admiration. Some offered tentative nods, others grinned openly, and even Professor Vallo inclined his head in acknowledgement. Amy felt a surge of pride, not just for herself but for humanity. She had proven that even in a galaxy full of powerful, extraordinary beings, human resilience and adaptability had something valuable to teach. The workshop had become more than a simple demonstration. It had sparked a new understanding, a bridge between worlds. As the students dispersed, some approached her to thank her personally. "This was incredible, Amy," Shuyek said, his eyes gleaming with respect. "I never imagined humans had so much to teach." Amy smiled, her voice warm with gratitude. "Thank you, Shuyek. Strength comes in many forms, and I think we all learned something about that today." In that moment, she knew she had made a difference. As the last of the participants filtered out of the hall, Amy remained, reflecting on the day's events. The once empty training space was now filled with the lingering energy of camaraderie and growth, a silent testament to the powerful exchange that had taken place. She had arrived at Atheria Academy feeling like an outsider, but today she had opened a door to greater understanding and respect between humans and aliens. Professor Vallo approached her, his segmented body moving smoothly as his 8 eyes blinked in thoughtful rhythm. "Miss Amy," he began, his voice resonating with a newfound warmth, "you've achieved something remarkable today. This workshop has reminded us that strength is as much about willpower as it is about physicality. You've given us a lesson we didn't know we needed." Amy felt a warmth rise in her chest, gratitude and pride swelling with each word. "Thank you, Professor. I didn't realize how much I could share until now. I think we all have more in common than we know." The professor nodded slowly, a rare smile touching his usually stern expression. "Indeed, you've shown us that humans are more than mere curiosity in this vast galaxy. You possess a strength that comes from a place deeper than biology or ability. It's humbling." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of his words settling between them. Amy knew she'd left an imprint here, not just through her demonstration, but through the values she had shared. She had demonstrated to her alien peers that strength was a universal trait, accessible to all who dared to push their limits. The next day, Amy's reputation continued to grow. Across the academy, students and faculty greeted her with nods of respect, some stopping her in the halls to ask more about human strength training. Even Glorin, who once doubted her, had come to view her with admiration. One afternoon, she found herself seated in a lecture hall filled with eager alien students, all awaiting her insights. She spoke about human history, resilience, and the spirit that drove her people to survive and adapt through hardship. Her words resonated deeply as her audience began to see humanity in a new light, not as fragile or unusual, but as tenacious and resilient. As she walked out of the lecture hall, Shuyak caught up to her. "Amy," he said, his voice softer than usual, "today's lesson, it made me think. It seems that we're all stronger than we assume, if we just believe in it." She smiled, nodding. "Exactly, Shuyak. Strength isn't just in our bodies. It's in our hearts, our minds, and in the way we choose to face challenges." A thoughtful silence fell between them as they looked out over the academy grounds, watching students from countless species cross paths, their differences blending into a rich tapestry of learning and growth. In the days that followed, Amy continued to see the effects of her workshop ripple through the academy. Her classmates, who once questioned her strength, now came to her for advice on training, resilience, and even courage. They embraced her teachings with open minds, applying the human concept of training and discipline to their own lives, sparking a transformation she never anticipated. Amy left Atheria Academy knowing she had achieved something far beyond her original goal. She had shared the heart of humanity with the galaxy and had proven that strength, true, enduring strength, was not limited to any one species. It was a gift, a quality that united them all. And as she boarded the shuttle back to Earth, she looked back one last time, knowing she had opened doors that could never be closed. Her journey had only just begun, but she had left a legacy, one that would continue to grow and inspire.